People believe that those who never lose are lucky, or smarter, or more ruthless. That belief helps them sleep at night, because the alternative is harder to accept. The alternative is that loss is not an accident. It is a predictable result of how you react when pressure is applied. Most people are not defeated by others. They are defeated by their own impulse to do something, to respond, to correct, to defend, to prove. This impulse appears quickly and feels justified. It seems rational. It seems necessary. But that is exactly where balance breaks. Those who never lose are not faster. They are slower, not in thought, in reaction. They allow a space between stimulus and response, a small space, almost invisible, but enough to change everything. In that space, emotion does not disappear. It is observed, without urgency, without identification, without being turned into action. Most people do not make this distinction. They believe that feeling something means they must do something. This confusion is constantly exploited. The instinct to react is not a flaw, it is a relic. It was useful when threats were simple and direct, a noise in the bushes, a hostile figure, a sudden movement. The body reacted before thought. Survival depended on speed. Today, threats are subtle, ambiguous, social, and rapid reaction no longer saves, it exposes. When someone provokes you verbally, they are not actually attacking you. They are testing you, testing how quickly you jump, how much you care, how easily you can be pushed out of position. Any emotional reaction is a confirmation. Any defensiveness is an invitation. Those who lose frequently believe they must win every moment, every exchange, every conversation. They feel constant pressure to leave nothing unresolved, to not appear weak, to not be misinterpreted. This pressure makes them predictable. Predictability is the greatest vulnerability in a power game, because if your reactions are easy to anticipate, they can be triggered on command. No force is required, only the right moment. Those who never lose do not rush to clarify. They do not rush to fix tension. They do not rush to restore harmony. They understand that tension is a tool, and that whoever cannot tolerate tension will make the first mistake. Silence is uncomfortable for those who feel insecure. The absence of reaction is interpreted as judgment, as disapproval, as threat. Even when it is none of these things, the mind fills the gaps with its own fears. That is where urgency appears. The urgency to explain, the urgency to justify, the urgency to speak too much. Every extra word shifts a bit of control to the other person, without the speaker realizing it. Those who never lose speak little, not because they have nothing to say, but because they know information flows anyway. The people around them will say enough about themselves, about their intentions, about their limits. It is enough to listen. Most people betray themselves within the first minutes of a tense interaction, through tone, through rhythm, through the desire to be validated, through the need to be understood. This need is deeply human and deeply exploitable. Being understood is not the same as being respected, but many confuse the two. They believe that if they explain well enough, they will be treated fairly. The reality is the opposite. The more you explain, the lower you position yourself. Those who never lose accept that they will not always be understood, and they do not invest energy in changing that. They are focused on position, not perception. Position is real. Perception is volatile. There is a key moment in every psychological confrontation. The moment when someone tries to pull you out of your rhythm. It may be a remark, an irony, a masked lack of respect, or a direct challenge. The instinctive reaction is to respond immediately, to show that you do not tolerate it. Those who never lose do not react then. They let the moment pass, and they observe what happens afterward. Often, the provocateur becomes uneasy because they did not receive the expected confirmation. They do not know if they struck the right place. They do not know if they were ignored or analyzed. This uncertainty is uncomfortable, and uncertainty makes people expose themselves, to insist, to escalate, to repeat. With each step, they lose finesse, control, the mask. Those who lose cannot tolerate not knowing. Those who do not lose use this, not through active manipulation, but through the absence of reaction. It is important to understand something from the beginning. This is not about becoming cold or distant. It is about becoming stable. Emotion appears, but it does not lead, it does not dictate, it does not rush. When emotional reaction is no longer the center, something different emerges. A wider perspective. You see not only what is said, but why. Not only what is done, but when. Not only the action, but the context. Most people live from inside their reactions. They are convinced these reactions are authentic, correct, justified. They rarely ask whether they are useful. Those who never lose ask this question before any move. It is a simple question, but a sharp one. Does this reaction increase my position or weaken it? Nothing more. Nothing moral, nothing emotional, only structure. At this point, something begins to change, not externally, internally. The pressure to do something decreases. The need to respond gradually disappears, not because the stimulus no longer exists, but because the stimulus is no longer interpreted as urgency. This is the first rupture, small, silent, but irreversible. From here begins the separation between those who lose and those who never lose. The continuation does not come with a leap, it comes with a slow slide. Because that is exactly how power changes in reality, not through clear confrontations, but through subtle shifts in the frame in which they occur. After reaction is suspended, the next test appears, the frame. Who defines what is happening? Who decides what matters? Who establishes what is normal and what is excessive? Most people do not realize when they enter a frame that does not belong to them. Because the entry is not marked, it is tacitly accepted. Someone makes a remark. You respond. From that moment on, you have accepted that the remark was legitimate, that it deserved a response, that it had authority over your attention. This is the first transfer of power, small, almost invisible, but real. Those who never lose are extremely attentive to this first step. They do not respond automatically because they know that every response validates the frame in which the provocation was made. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not acknowledge the frame at all. Not acknowledging the frame does not mean ignoring the person. It means not accepting the terms of the game. This is a distinction few understand. Ignoring is reactive. It is hostile. Non-reaction is neutral, calm, stable, and precisely for that reason, destabilizing. People are accustomed to their actions producing effects. When that does not happen, confusion appears. Confusion quickly turns into anxiety. Anxiety seeks resolution, and resolution usually comes in the form of a mistake. Those who lose feel the need to quickly clarify who is above, who is right, who controls the situation. Those who do not lose let these questions float, because they know that the one who cannot tolerate ambiguity will yield first. There is a common illusion that power is something that must be asserted, shown, confirmed. In reality, power that needs confirmation is already unstable. Those who never lose do not assert their position. They behave as if the position is already established, and others adapt. This adaptation is not conscious. No one says, "Now I give in." It is a slow process, small adjustments, a changed tone, increased caution, more carefully chosen words. All of these appear without being asked for, because people sense where they should not push. The frame is maintained not through force, but through consistency. If you react sometimes and other times you do not, you create an unstable pattern. People will test, they will push, they will look for the limit. But if your non-reaction is consistent, the pressure shifts entirely onto them. Many confuse this position with indifference, but indifference does not observe. Those who do not lose observe everything. They simply do not intervene. They see every attempt to shift the frame, every joke that tests respect, every question that seeks to reduce position, every compliment that tries to create obligation. Compliments are one of the most underestimated instruments of control. Because they appear positive, but they create an expectation, an implicit relationship, an invitation to reciprocate. Those who lose feel good and respond. Those who do not lose note the context and move on. They do not refuse. They do not reject. They do not return the compliment. They let it exist without turning it into a contract. This creates a subtle tension, because the gesture did not produce the expected effect, and the one who made it does not know why. Over time, these micro-tensions accumulate, not in you, in others. They begin to feel that they cannot obtain a clear reaction, that they cannot fix your position, that they cannot read you easily. This is perceived as power, not because it is displayed, but because it is opaque. People feel comfortable with what they can read, what they can anticipate, what they can control. Opacity creates instinctive respect, not conscious, not verbalized, but real. Those who lose try to be transparent, to be open, to be fair. They believe this will give them security. In reality, it gives them exposure, because anything visible can be used. Those who do not lose do not offer free access to their intentions, not because they have something to hide, but because they know that premature intentions weaken position. They act when it is necessary, not when it is expected. There is a moment when others begin to feel that they are being evaluated, even if they are not. The mere absence of reaction creates the impression of analysis. People adjust their behavior under this impression. They become more cautious, more calculated, less impulsive. At that moment, the frame is shifted, without announcement, without confrontation, without conflict, simply through maintaining calm in one's own rhythm. Most people do not realize how much they betray their position through urgency. The urgency to reply to messages, the urgency to explain a decision, the urgency to fix a tension that was not even real. Every instance of urgency sends the same message, that your time is available, that your attention is accessible, that pressure works. Those who never lose protect their rhythm with a strictness that seems natural. They make no visible effort. They simply do not align with the urgencies of others. This forces recalibration. People begin to move around them, not the other way around. There are no declarations of authority. There is no imposition. There is only a fixed point. And in an unstable system, fixed points become centers of gravity. This position is uncomfortable for those accustomed to controlling through emotional pressure. They will try other strategies. They will provoke empathy. They will play the victim. They will suggest moral obligations. They will test guilt. All are different forms of the same thing, attempts to move you from the center. Those who lose fall into these traps because they want to be good. Correct? Understood. Those who do not lose see the mechanism, and they do not personalize it. They do not feel attacked. They do not feel indebted. They simply observe. This detachment is not a lack of humanity. It is a lack of confusion. Emotion does not disappear, but it is no longer confused with obligation. As the frame remains stable, something becomes clear. Power is not about making others do something. It is about not being forced to do anything. This is the difference few understand until they feel it. When you are no longer pulled into reactions, when you are no longer moved by the urgencies of others, when you no longer accept frames that do not belong to you, the game changes. It does not become easier, it becomes clearer. And clarity is uncomfortable for those who relied on chaos. This is the second stage. Control of the frame without declaring it. Stability that shifts pressure, silence that forces exposure, and only now does the part begin where old instincts are placed under real pressure. There is a point where control of the frame is no longer enough, because sooner or later, pressure moves deeper, from the outside to the inside, from rhythm and reaction to identity. That is where most losses are decided. Not visibly, not dramatically, but permanently. Most people do not realize how attached they are to the idea of who they believe they are. We are not talking about declared values, but about the internal narrative. I'm the kind of person who I would never. Things are different with me. These statements are not descriptions, they are anchors, and any anchor can be pulled. Identity offers psychological stability. It reduces uncertainty. It tells you how you should react before you think. For this reason, it is comfortable. For this reason, it is dangerous. Because once someone understands how you see yourself, they can predict how you will act. Those who lose consistently believe their identity is a shield. They believe that if they are consistent with who they are, they will be respected. Reality is the opposite. Rigid identity is a fixed target, and fixed targets are the easiest to hit. Those who never lose do not cling to an identity, not because they lack values or principles, but because they do not turn them into automatic reactions. They allow themselves to be inconsistent on the surface in order to remain consistent at the level of position. This makes them difficult to read and extremely difficult to manipulate, because most manipulations do not attack logic, they attack self-image. They suggest who you should be and then wait for you to comply. If you were truly strong, you would react. If you were fair, you would explain. If you were confident, you would confront. These messages are rarely direct. They are usually subtle, ambiguous, half-spoken, but they trigger something old, the need to be congruent with one's own image. Those who lose feel this pressure as a personal challenge, as a test of character, and they respond. Not because the situation demands it, but because identity demands it. In that moment, the decision is no longer strategic, it is defensive. Those who do not lose observe this pressure without internalizing it. They see the attempt to activate a fixed identity, and they do not bite, because they know identity is only a tool, not a truth. There is a major difference between having an internal core and wearing a rigid mask. The internal core does not need to constantly manifest itself. The mask does. The mask must be confirmed, defended, reaffirmed, and that is exactly where vulnerability appears. People who lose do not lose because they are weak. They lose because they are too attached to appearing as something. Anything you cling to can be used against you, even the things considered positive. Kindness, fairness, loyalty, courage, all can become pressure points when they are turned into public identity, because they create expectations, and expectations can be manipulated. Those who never lose do not rush to demonstrate what kind of people they are. They let behavior be interpreted, sometimes incorrectly. They do not intervene, because they do not feel the need to align with others' perceptions. This internal freedom is unsettling for those around them because most people operate on the basis of external coherence. If someone does not play the expected role, discomfort appears, and discomfort seeks resolution. Usually, resolution comes in the form of a moral or identity challenge, a suggestion that you have violated your own standard, an insinuation that you contradict yourself, a question that does not seek an answer but compliance. Those who lose immediately enter justification, explanation, correction, because they feel their integrity is being attacked. Those who do not lose do not feel this, because their integrity does not depend on external approval. They know who they are. And precisely for that reason, they do not need to prove it. This is a rare position, and an extremely stable one. At this point, psychological pressure increases because those around you begin to feel that they cannot access your core, that they cannot pull on your values, that they cannot force you to react in order to protect your image. And this creates frustration. Frustration brings more primitive impulses to the surface. The tone changes, subtlety disappears, irritation appears, irony or passive aggression. It is a clear sign that identity no longer works as an entry point. Those who do not lose do not take pleasure in this. They do not exploit it ostentatiously. They note it. Because frustration is information. It tells where the other's limits are. It tells what has worked until now and no longer works. There is an internal moment when you realize that you no longer have to be anything for anyone, that you can let labels fall away, that you can respond or not without feeling that you are betraying your character. This moment is destabilizing, but liberating. For many, it is too uncomfortable because identity provides safety. Without it, space remains, and space demands responsibility. You can no longer say, "That's just how I am." You must consciously choose every move. Those who never lose accept this responsibility. They do not seek refuge in roles. They do not hide behind declarative principles. They operate from observation and context, from reality, not from story. This does not make them without values. It makes them flexible. And flexibility is one of the most underestimated forms of power. Because rigidity breaks under pressure, flexibility adapts, and those who lose are almost always the rigid ones, rigid in image, rigid in reaction, rigid in how they believe they should be treated. Those who do not lose allow themselves to appear uncomfortable, ambiguous, sometimes contradictory, but internally they remain stable. And this stability is not negotiable. As identity ceases to be a battlefield, something changes permanently. The impulse to demonstrate disappears, to correct, to defend. All that remains is the cold evaluation of the situation. And this is exactly where the final separation happens, because once you are no longer bound to who you should be, no one can move you by appealing to the ego. In the next part, pressure will go even further, beyond identity, toward the oldest instinct of all, the need for control and the fear of losing it. There, losses are no longer small and no longer recoverable. When identity can no longer be used as leverage, the game does not stop. It deepens. Because beneath identity there is something older, more primitive, harder to control, the need for control and the fear of losing it. Most people say they want control, but what they actually want is predictability. They want to know what comes next. They want to know where they stand. They want to know what they can expect from others. This need is not intellectual, it is visceral. When predictability disappears, the body reacts before thought. Those who lose do not lose when things go badly. They lose when things become unclear, when they no longer know what a gesture means, when they can no longer read intention, when they can no longer anticipate the next move. At that moment, the impulse to force clarity appears. Forcing clarity is one of the most costly psychological moves because it shifts control outward. You give the other person the power to calm your anxiety, to offer or withhold certainty, to decide the rhythm. Those who never lose observe this impulse without satisfying it. They tolerate ambiguity. They let it exist. They do not resolve it prematurely, because they know ambiguity affects others far more than it affects them. There is a clear difference between not having control and not needing it. Those who lose confuse the two. They believe that lack of action means loss of control. In reality, it is often the opposite. The need to act is the sign that control has already been lost. When someone feels the need to rush a response, to obtain confirmation, to force a decision, it is usually not because the situation demands it. It is because internal discomfort has become too great, and internal discomfort is visible. Those who never lose do not mask their control. They do not try to appear relaxed. They are relaxed, because they do not tie their stability to immediate outcomes. They do not seek to close emotional loops quickly. They leave them open. An open loop creates tension, and tension seeks resolution. But not in you, in the other person. They are the one who begins to make assumptions, to test, to explain themselves, to offer concessions, all in order to restore a sense of control. Many people believe that the one who asks questions controls the conversation. Often this is true, but there is a deeper level. The one who can remain silent without becoming uneasy controls the emotional frame, and the emotional frame is what dictates decisions. When you do not feel the pressure to resolve, others feel it twice as strongly, because your silence is not neutral to them. It is interpreted, analyzed, sometimes exaggerated. Every interpretation belongs to them. You have done nothing. This is a critical point, because this is where the temptation to intervene appears, to clarify, to reassure, to reduce tension. Those who lose give in here, because the other person's tension becomes uncomfortable, and they confuse it with personal responsibility. Those who do not lose do not take on the tension of others. They do not absorb it. They do not resolve it. They leave it where it appeared. This is one of the clearest differences in position: who carries the tension and who generates it. Real control is not about dictating. It is about deciding what you take on and what you leave. Which emotion is yours and which emotion belongs to someone else. Most people do not make this distinction. They feel something and assume they must do something. There is another mechanism that appears at this point: boundary testing. When someone feels they cannot move you through identity or emotional pressure, they will try to force your hand. Through subtle ultimatums, through fabricated urgency, through time pressure. You have to decide now. We can't wait. If you don't respond, it means that these formulations are not neutral. They are attempts to take control of the rhythm from you, because whoever controls time controls the decision. Those who lose react immediately to time pressure, because limited time activates the fear of loss, of opportunity, of position, of relationship. The body reacts as if something valuable is about to disappear. Those who do not lose ask themselves one thing: what happens if I do nothing right now? Often, the answer is simple. The pressure disappears, or it shifts, or it proves to be artificial. This does not mean they never act quickly. It means they do not allow speed to be imposed from the outside. They choose the moment, and that choice changes everything. As you refuse to be rushed, to be forced, to be pushed, others begin to feel that they do not have access to your center. that they cannot trigger automatic reactions, that they cannot use the fear of loss. And then something interesting appears: resignation or escalation. Some give up. Others become more aggressive, more direct, less calculated. This is a clear bifurcation, and both directions are informative. Those who escalate do so because they feel they are losing control, and people who feel they are losing control make mistakes. They say too much. They reveal too clearly what they want, where it hurts, what scares them. Those who do not lose observe these moments without satisfaction, because they are not about victory, they are about clarity. At that point, the dynamic is exposed. There is nothing left to guess. There is a quiet that appears when you realize that you do not need to control anything externally, that the only thing that matters is not being controlled internally, not reacting to fear, to urgency, to pressure, to imagined loss. This quiet is heavy. It is not easy. It is not pleasant. It is dense, because it comes with the responsibility of sitting with uncertainty, of not clinging to outcomes, of accepting that some things may leave. Most people cannot tolerate this weight. That is why they react. That is why they give in. That is why they lose. Not because they could not endure it, but because they were never trained to remain still under pressure. Those who never lose are not without fear. They are accustomed to it. They do not let it decide. They let it exist. And that makes them unpredictable to those who rely on triggering it. At this point, something changes permanently in your perception. You no longer see situations as urgent or threatening. You see them as structural. Who wants what? Who pressures? Who waits? Who yields? Emotional reaction begins to seem primitive, not wrong, just inappropriate, like an old reflex in a world that functions differently. There is a moment when you no longer look for the next step, not because you lack options, but because you no longer feel the need to move. This is the point most people never reach, because it does not resemble success. It does not resemble victory. It resembles a heavy, stable quiet that asks for nothing. This is where those who never lose arrive, not through accumulation, but through elimination. The elimination of unnecessary reaction. The elimination of attachment to outcome. The elimination of the need to control perception. The elimination of the fear of loss. What remains is not empty, it is dense. Most people believe power feels like energy, like expansion, like intensity. In reality, mature power feels like weight, like the absence of agitation, like a stability that does not explain itself and does not defend itself. At this point, the world begins to behave differently around you. Not because you asked for anything, but because people sense that they cannot move you easily, they cannot rush you, they cannot scare you, they cannot flatter you effectively, they cannot provoke you predictably. And when these tools no longer work, most social strategies collapse. Some people withdraw because they gain nothing. Others remain but change their tone. They become more direct, more cautious, more calculated. Without realizing it, they align themselves to your rhythm. Not because you dominate them, but because you offer no points of entry. This is the essential difference. Power no longer comes from influencing. It comes from being difficult to influence. Not rigid, not closed, but stable. Those who lose are always trying to gain something. A position, a reaction, a confirmation, a concession. Those who do not lose have exited this logic. They no longer negotiate with the emotional reality of others. They observe it. And that is all. At this stage, emotions still appear, but they are quickly recognized as signals, not commands. Fear no longer says act, it says observe. Anger no longer says attack, it says who is trying to move me. Enthusiasm no longer says hurry, it says what is being offered to me. This change is subtle, but irreversible. Once you have seen how the mechanism works, you cannot return to complete blindness. You can react again, of course, but you will do it consciously, and that changes the cost. Those who never lose are not invincible. They can lose things, opportunities, relationships, positions, but they do not lose the internal frame. They do not lose control over reaction, and because they do not lose that, they do not lose everything. There is a major difference between losing something and being defeated. Most people confuse the two. They cling to things, to people, to outcomes, because they believe losing them defines them. Those who do not lose have separated these planes. Things may leave, position remains. This separation creates a type of freedom that is not euphoric. It is calm, cold, functional. There is no longer pressure to maintain everything, to fix everything, to respond to everything. Life becomes simpler not because it has fewer challenges, but because they are no longer personalized. When someone attacks you, it is no longer about you. When someone pressures you, it is no longer about you. When someone ignores you, it is no longer about you. It is about what that person is trying to obtain, avoid, or control. This shift in perspective dramatically reduces internal noise. Noise is what makes people lose, not lack of intelligence, not lack of resources, but the constant interference between emotion and decision. Once the interference disappears, decisions become rare, but precise. Those who do not lose are not busy all the time. They have space. Space allows them to see patterns, to anticipate, to choose the moments worth engaging in. The rest is allowed to pass, not out of superiority, out of economy. There is an economy of attention that few respect. Most people waste their attention on minor conflicts, sterile provocations, ego games. Those who do not lose treat attention as a limited resource, and they do not invest it without return. At this point, there is no longer a desire to prove anything, because proving is for those who want to be seen. Those who do not lose do not need to be seen correctly, only to be positioned correctly. Position is not explained, it is felt. It is felt in the way you do not rush, in the way you do not react, in the way you do not take on others' tension, in the way you can say very little and still change direction. This is the final form of control, not control over people, but over your own presence. Presence that does not ask, does not beg, does not force. It simply exists. To those on the outside, this may seem cold, distant, indifferent, but from the inside it is stable, clear, free of dramatism. It is the state in which emotional reaction begins to seem unnecessary, not wrong, just outdated. There is no longer a need to win, because the games that demanded winning have been abandoned, not through resignation, but through understanding. You have seen the structure, and once you see the structure, you are no longer trapped in it. At the end, there is no enthusiasm left, no hope. There remains the quiet of no longer being pulled by small things. There remains detachment from impulse. There remains the weight of a mind that no longer moves unnecessarily. Those who never lose do not feel invincible. They feel quiet, present, unhurried, and precisely for that reason, loss no longer finds anywhere to attach, not because it has disappeared from the world, but because within you it no longer has a point of entry.